This video is about Robert Irwin and how he got me thinking about legacy. It's actually going to be more about legacy than about Robert Irwin himself, but I bet you're paying attention. Like a lot of the world, I watched Robert Irwin basically dominate and then win on Dancing with the Stars. This is not a video about whether he should or should not have won. Save that for another platform. But because every time he did well, or every time he was interviewed, or every time it came up, which honestly was a lot, he talked about his dad, right? Steve Irwin. And how no matter what happened, Robert's goal was to basically carry on his dad's legacy and mission of conservation. Wonderful goal. Love it. Love seeing him talk about his dad. He's just a genuinely wonderful human being. But every time he talked about legacy and carrying on his dad's legacy, it got me. Not because it was very sweet, because I also lost my father. I was 15. I lost my father to alcoholism, and I wrote a book about it, The Things We Cannot Change, a story about the ghosts created by addiction. And whenever he talked about carrying on his dad's legacy, I started pondering legacy for a couple of reasons. One, I don't have any kids. I have a bonus kid, I have a niece and a nephew, and hopefully they will remember me when I am gone, but I don't have actual blood children in the way that Steve Irwin has Robert Irwin to carry on his legacy. My dad probably thought about legacy in a number of different ways throughout his life. Early in his life, he was a very talented musician. He had a very promising musical career ahead of him. He was very locally famous. He played with Elvis's band. He was coming up in the world for a while. So he probably thought that his legacy would be his music career. Later in his life, I wonder if he was concerned about what he might leave behind. He was very well aware that he was probably going to die young and that he was going to leave behind very angry and conflicted children. Did that worry him? Did he worry about his legacy? Did he think he'd ruined his chances to leave behind any sort of lasting or positive legacy? I don't know. But I think about that, and I thought about it a lot as Robert Irwin talked about his dad's legacy. And I wondered what my dad's legacy was and what mine would be without kids. I don't have kids, but what I do have is writing and this book. Addiction took away his musical career. It didn't take away his talent and the talent he bestowed upon his children. He not only was a musician, he wrote his own music. He was a very creative person, and he passed that on to me. I then in turn took those abilities and that talent, and I wrote our story. At first, I wrote our story because I just needed to get it out. 25 years after he passed, I knew it needed to be told. I'd always known it would need to be told, but it took me that long before I finally wrote it. As a writer, and someone who's always known they wanted to be a writer, you hope that your books are your legacy, your words, your stories, that long after you're gone, your stories and words will live on in your books and through readers. Because I'm telling my dad's story of his struggle, I tried to put in a little bit of background information, a little bit about his life, about why he struggled with the demons he struggled with. Obviously, I don't know, but I have a lot of his journals. I have a lot of his writings from rehab. So I tried to paint a well-rounded picture of his addiction while still showing that I was very angry with him and how that all comes together, hoping that all would help someone in the future. When I was going through all this, I felt very alone going through it. I felt like I was the only one. I know now that is not true. Many people go through this, but I am probably one of the few who went through this and also writes. And I write because of my dad, who did say in his journals that if he could overcome his addiction, that maybe he would become a counselor so that he could help others someday maybe overcome their own addictions. Now that never happened. Unfortunately, his addiction was just too strong. His body couldn't handle it, and that's what ultimately led to his passing. So he himself cannot help people, but through his daughter, maybe he can. This book is impacting people. I have seen it. While it's not as well known and selling as widely as I would like it to, it is impacting people. I have heard from the people who have read it that it had a very positive impact on them. People are taking actions because of this book. They are reaching out to the addicts in their lives because they understand them a little bit better. I had a therapist call this book life-changing. The therapist got it because a client brought it into them. The client read it and it had such an impact on them that they took it to therapy with them, and that therapist read it and called it life-changing. So this story, my dad's story, our story, is helping people. And that's a little bit of a legacy. Hopefully this book will outlive me. People will keep reading it even when I'm gone. People are reading it now even when he's gone. His story, even though it did not have a happy ending, is still helping people. Maybe it's helping people get their own happy endings, whatever that looks like. It can help us understand each other better, and I think that is really important, especially as the daughter of an addict, of an alcoholic. I understand so much more now about my dad than I did when I was going through it. So I don't know if that's how legacy works. I always imagined legacy as something positive you are intentionally building with the intent of someone else picking it up and taking it with them. Someone taking your message and spreading it even when you are gone. That's what Robert Irwin is doing with Steve Irwin. My dad didn't intentionally leave behind a legacy of struggling with his inner demons so much so that it impacted his daughter into her 30s and 40s. But what I did with that story is maybe giving him another chance at some sort of legacy. Maybe it's not the legacy he desired, but it's still a legacy, and hopefully it can help people. Maybe that counts. I don't have a neat ending to this video. There's no neat ending to this story. There's never a neat ending. So those are my thoughts on legacy. Those are my thoughts on my dad's legacy and the fact that maybe he is leaving behind a legacy when he probably thought he never would. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble about these complicated things. That is actually what this channel is for, to talk about complicated grief. So if that sounds like something that you would find beneficial, please subscribe. If this book sounds like something that could benefit you, I'll put all the ways you can get it in the description below. Thank you for being here and have a wonderful rest of your day.